Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So, today I have something a little different for you. I'm interviewing an immigration lawyer who's based in Argentina. We're doing a talk about everything you need to know if you want to move in Argentina legally. This is the most up to date information you'll find on Argentina residency and citizenship. So, if that's something you've been talking about, you're on the right place. We're covering how to get residency, how long it takes, and what the citizenship process and pathway looks like. All of that, so keep watching. So today we are with Dr. Svirnovsky, and I would like to ask him a couple of questions for your information. Can you introduce yourself and tell us how long you've been practicing law in Argentina?
Naturally. Well, first of all, thank you very much, Laila, for this invitation. It's a pleasure for me. For those who don't know me yet, I'm Dr. Nicolás Svirnovsky. I'm based here in Buenos Aires, Argentina. I've been practicing law already for a couple of years, but specific migrations law for the last 3 years. I studied at Universidad de Buenos Aires, and well, since then, I've been practicing immigration law, which has become my passion basically in the area of law.
That's great. And what kinds of clients do you mostly work with? Is it like tourists, remote workers, retirees, etc.?
That's actually a really good question you made, Laila, because I have really different clients, to be honest. Most of my clients tend to be retiree people coming from the United States or from Europe, but sometimes, Argentina is a beautiful country. I have some tourists that come to Argentina and they say, I want to live in Argentina, so they just want to have a consultation and know how's the process to come here. So it's a big variety of clients, but mostly now retiree people, people from the States, some European people, but also students, for example. It can be really, really different.
And speaking of tourist clients, are you able to help with those who have an expired tourist visas?
Well, in terms of expired tourist visas, there's a thing. Once your tourist visa has expired, properly said, you cannot stay in the country legally because you become what is called an irregular migrant. When you are irregular, you cannot apply for residency. This is important to know. So what you will have to do is to get out from the country. So let's say go to Uruguay for a day or two, then re-enter, and at the moment of re-entering, say to the migrations officer, I'm coming to apply for residency under, and explain the category. It could be retiree, but maybe rentier or student visa. So it's important to explain, okay?
Excellent. So another thing, what are the most common ways for a foreigner to get residency in Argentina?
Well, we have a big variety of categories, a wide variety of categories. So the most common, let's say for retired people, for example, if their pension is an equivalent of 1,400 US dollars, more or less 1,300 could be eventually, it would be the retiree category. But if this person is a student, for example, then the student visa. But then, for example, you have two student visas, informal studies and formal studies. So it will all depend on the needs of the client, okay, and whether we can find a category that suits the client well, okay? But the most common, as I said, are retiree, rentier, student, and also, of course, we don't have to forget about residency by marriage, okay? Because sometimes, love happens, a person falls in love with an Argentinian, and then they decide to start a new life here, and that's also a huge possibility, okay?
And if they did take this pathway, how long does the process typically complete from start to finish?
Now, migrations office is experiencing huge delays in the applications. That doesn't mean that the applications are not going to be solved, but the client needs to be patient, okay? So more or less from the very beginning of the application till the very end, it can be from a minimum of 3 months plus another 3 months till the DNI, which is our ID, arrives. And sometimes, depending if there are some documents missing or something missing, then this process could be more than 3 months, could be sometimes 6, 7, or 8, okay? Plus the time for the ID to arrive, okay? It will depend on the circumstances of the case and also on the delays of the migration office. Having this said, if the delay is really huge, we have the legal tools to speed up the things, okay? But it would be a matter, of course, of reaching out to us and, and to see what we can do.
Thank you for your inputs. What general documents do people need to prepare?
Well, that's a good question because what happens most of the time is that people tend to forget about the essential documents they should bring from their home countries. So it is essential that they bring their criminal background check apostille. That's a must, okay? It doesn't matter which visa they are applying for, okay? It could be student, it could be retiree, but to bring the criminal background check from their home country apostille is a must. Then it will depend, of course, on the visa they are applying for. If it is a retiree, they need their pension letter, apostille. If it is a student visa, then different certificates. So if it is a rentier, they will need to bring, for example, if they have rental property, the contracts, okay, of their property, an apostille, in order to present this as a proof of the passive income required for this visa, okay?
You have an excellent point. And corresponding to that question, can someone start the process while living outside of Argentina, or do they need to be here? And also, can they start anywhere in Argentina since you are in Buenos Aires?
That's also a really, really good question for the people to know. The process could be started eventually outside from Argentina, and we have to clarify this point. It's important to know which people from which countries can do this. Okay, why? Because let's say if you are from a country that does not need a visa to enter Argentina, okay, let's say an American doesn't need a visa to enter Argentina. So this person could apply straightforward here in Argentina. Okay, they could apply in any province here in the country. But if you come from a country that needs a tourist visa to enter, then this is more complicated, and I will encourage you to apply at your consulate. Okay. Sometimes it's a little bit more bureaucratic via consulate, but again, it's a possibility for anyone in the world, but especially it's a must for the people that need a tourist visa to enter Argentina.
And what are the most common mistakes people make that either slow down or derail their application?
That's also a really good question because usually some mistakes, of course, are not something that the people would make consciously, but again, it's important always, just like as giving a tip, I would encourage the people, I would really recommend to make a checklist, okay? So at the very end, they know all the documents they have to bring and they have the time to organize them. The most common mistake basically is that people arrive in Argentina are super happy because they are in the country, they want to start a new life. But what will happen eventually? They forgot the most important documents. And after, it's a super big rush because they have to hire a company to get their criminal background check from another country, send stuff via DHL or FedEx. That implies, of course, spending more money. And of course, it delays the process because without these important documents, they cannot apply. And at the same time, they are staying as tourists so far, okay? Because they're in their 90-day period, they can stay as tourists. But if this period expires, then it's a huge problem, okay? So it's like a race against the clock, as we would say.
To
Yeah.
apply for residency or citizenship, what are specific advantages for people from countries like that have agreements with Argentina, like from the Mercosur countries or members,
Okay.
and let's say Spain and Italy, for example?
Well, again, that's something really important to have in mind. If maybe someone watching us is from Latin America, it's from a Mercosur country. Keep in mind that when we say Mercosur, it's not only the main countries of the Mercosur. Guyana, Colombia, Ecuador are also included into this, okay? So all the people coming from Mercosur countries have a special access to a visa, which is called the Mercosur visa, which allows them, just by their nationality, the access to have 2 years of residency as temporary residents, and then after these 2 years to switch to permanent, okay? But as regards Italy and Spain, despite this big connection we have in Argentina with Italians and the Spanish people, we don't have special residency agreements still for these people, okay? So they will have to go through the regular process of applying for residency.
So, what options are there for remote workers or digital nomads who earn income from abroad?
Well, indeed, there are options, okay? One option is the digital nomad visa, okay? The digital nomad visa has, let's say, a legal disadvantage, which is that with this visa, you cannot gain access to an ID, okay? So that implies you won't gain access eventually to permanent residency. However, if your will is just to stay in the country for a year, enjoy the Argentinian experience, and work remotely, then it's an amazing choice, which is the digital nomad visa. And another choice would be if they have a passive income, let's say they have profit from a company or they have property for rent outside, they could apply for the rentier visa, okay, which is also a good option for people having a certain income coming from abroad.
And if someone has a spouse or a child who is an Argentine citizen, does that speed up the residency or citizenship process, do you think?
Now, with the changes in the law, just for the people to know, the laws have changed last year in the month of May, so things are different now. So if you have an Argentinian child or an Argentinian spouse, you won't gain access straightforward for citizenship. However, you will gain access to a temporary residency, 3 years. And something important to know, if you haven't left the country in the first 2 years you were living in Argentina, you will be able eventually to apply for citizenship, but you won't gain the access straightforward as it used to be before, or as it can be in a different country, okay?
Wow, so that's a lot of changes that has been happening since I've moved here past 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, indeed, they have changed.
All right, so let's talk about the pathway to citizenship in more general information. Now, once someone has residency, how long before they can apply for citizenship?
So once you have become a resident, the law says you need to live in the country without leaving for 2 years. So after 2 years of living in the country, you would eventually be able to apply for citizenship. Please keep in mind that the new regime of citizenship applications is new for everybody. In the past, it used to be a legal process. Now it is a process done at the migrations office. And this process, the very first applications we have had, are taking a long time to be reviewed. So now, after 8 months, we are having the first revisions of the cases, and we are being informed on how to continue. So it's a matter also of being patient. It's not immediate. It's not that you say, okay, tomorrow I become a citizen. It's not going to happen that way. It's a matter of being patient.
Yes, obviously. And just to insert a little question on that, what if someone is currently applying for a citizenship and they wish to travel to, let's say, Paraguay or Chile for a day or two? Would that derail the citizenship application process, perhaps?
Well, according to the law, there's nothing said about going out after applying, okay? So we are expecting to see what will be the application of the law made by the migrations office. Because, for example, not only the situation you mentioned, but we have some people that have lived in the country for the last 15 years, they have paid taxes, they They had been basically experiencing Argentina and, making their effort for the country too. And maybe because they left for a couple of days on holidays, as everybody could eventually do, now they're scared that their processes will be rejected. But again, we have to wait. We have some clients in this situation, and we are willing to see if the migrations office will be flexible about this, because in the end, it's been a long time living in the country for applying, or if they will be strict to what the law says. Okay, so now as the process is new, we are waiting to see what will happen. But regarding your question, as you said, if you can travel after applying, eventually you can. Again, there's nothing established in the law about that, but we are waiting to see what will happen.
So what does the citizenship process actually looks like? Is there a test, an interview, or a language requirements?
Sometimes many people are scared about this, especially regarding the the language requirements. Just for everybody to know this, there's no language requirement. Okay, so you don't need a specific level of Spanish to apply for citizenship. There's not a test, at least so far there's not a test, but it is important at the moment of applying for citizenship to be working legally in the country and to have regular income made in the country. For example, they are asking as part of the documentation, of the initial documentation, to provide the, let's say, the invoices for those who are self-employed. So they are actually asking to provide, to see that the person is paying taxes in the country, that the person works in the country, which is indeed different from the residency applications, which sometimes the income can come from abroad and there's no problem. For citizenship, they're actually asking for income to be made in the country.
Thank you for that. And can Argentina citizenship be passed down to children born abroad?
Indeed, it can. Okay, so if you're a native Argentinian, okay, if you're a native Argentinian, then you can pass citizenship to your kid if your kid is born abroad. This is important to know because, for example, let's say I will give an example with myself. Let's say in the future I decide to move and I say, well, I want to start a new life in Australia. So if one of my children want to become Argentinian at the time and they were born in Australia, because of the fact that I was born in Argentina, they can apply for citizenship, okay? And it's a really fast process. But this cannot be done when you have gotten citizenship for because of naturalization, okay? So if you got naturalized in the country, that means that you came to Argentina and then you became a citizen, and then you move abroad away, or you already had a child that was born abroad, you cannot pass citizenship to this child. That's important to know. That's important to know. However, if your children, or if you have children that are born afterwards, let's say, because you have to leave Argentina and you are already an Argentinian citizen, you can they can gain access to permanent residency. So it's not that they won't have any benefit, at least they could gain permanent residency, okay, which is important.
Okay, the next question that most people might want to know too, does Argentina allow dual citizenship and can they renounce their citizenship?
Well, that's a good question, and it's a question that many clients have made to us. Argentina allows double citizenship. We don't have any problems with double citizenship in the country, but it's important, doesn't matter from which country you come from, that you check with your home country if it is possible to have another nationality. Usually, some countries allow to renounce the nationality. Some countries nationality is perpetual, okay? So in South America, in countries like Argentina, you cannot say, I don't want to be an Argentinian anymore. Once you become Argentinian, you're an Argentinian forever, okay? But sometimes, I don't know, some certain European countries, certain African countries, maybe some countries in North America, this is possible to do, okay? But it's important, first of all, before applying for Argentinian citizenship, to check with your home country if this is possible, if you can apply. And secondly, if you can renounce your former nationality, just in case you want to renounce it. And keep in mind that once you become an Argentinian, you will never stop being an Argentinian, okay?
I love that. Okay, since the process to gain citizenship is now handled by the Migraciones or the immigration office, what happens if someone's applications gets rejected? Can they appeal for this?
Of course, all the resolutions of the migrations office can be appealed. There is a first instance of administrative appeals, which are done within the same migrations office. And eventually, if the characteristics of the case they make it possible to go to the justice, then appeals can be made at administrative justice. But of course, it will depend on the characteristics of the case and to analyze it properly.
Okay, thank you for that. So, what are all the services do you offer?
In my firm, we offer a wide variety of services. Of course, our focus is on migrations law, so we provide with solutions in terms of residency, citizenship applications, but also, for example, when a couple wants to register their marriage that was celebrated abroad in the country, we also assist them in these processes. So it's a wide variety of legal services, and of course, the most important legal services regarding migrations, okay?
So that was super informative. And honestly, I learned a lot from this conversation too. For the viewers, I hope that it clears things up for those of you who have been wondering about the legal side of moving and living in Argentina. If you want to get in touch with him directly, I'll drop the link in the description below. Just fill out a short form and he'll reach out to you. Super easy. And if you're curious about life in Argentina, I have a ton of videos on the channel, so just browse around. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.